Hey, YouTube. How is it going? I hope all is well. Today we're going to talk about just some very more specific things about some stuff I said the other day. I don't want people to get the idea that I am bashing on these companies to bash on them. So I wanted to do some clarification. Happy St. Patrick's Day, of course. It's also my mother-in-law's birthday today, so happy birthday to her. I also wanted to just say that it's crazy. So many years ago, I did the world premiere for McLaren's like their 635P or whatever it is. You know, they had just come out with that, or their 650 or whatever it is, LP, or I don't know, whatever. Their supercar that was kind of meant for the everyday guy, right? So we only got a couple times to rehearse it. We didn't get to do it too many times, and the guy that did all the videography work, basically doing the stuff that you're seeing now on the screen, where he's pushing the button to go from this screen to that screen, etc., etc. You know, he did all of that work, so he knew exactly all the timing and stuff like that. Well, I had to run the audio, being the audio guy, so I had to be ready to, have all the recalls and instant replays and stuff like that ready to go. And we only got to do it a few times, and I was scared shitless, obviously, because, it's the world premiere of this particular vehicle, and, it's McLaren. So I didn't want to botch it. So I had to count down everything. But in either case, what I'm getting at with that is that I was nervous as we were coming up to hitting the transitions here, mainly because I guess I still have that thing where I want it to be perfect and whatnot. You'll probably notice that the video looks a little bit different today. I am using my iPhone with that app I was talking about, so never mind the watermark that you see here. I'm just trying something different today because I didn't really like the look of that other camera, although it wasn't horrible bad, but this one is much better, I feel. In either case, I got a new camera on the way that should resolve all of these problems. We shall see. But I want to say thank you to everybody from the other night. I appreciate you hanging with me like champions. That was a pretty long live stream. I think it came out to something close to 3 hours or something like that. So quite some time, to be honest. I'm tired today. I was up at 3 a.m. this morning, so I only got a few hours of sleep, if that, last night. I had to take the missus into the airport so she can go do some stuff for work. So I'm definitely not going to try to make this one a 3-hour session. So what are we actually talking about today? The title is what makes an amp build bad, and, basically why I owe them some explanation or something like that. That's more or less what we're kind of getting at here. The idea that I was getting at yesterday about some of these amp builders and, not being boutique and all that stuff was something other than the build quality itself. I was talking more about when you get to a certain point, you do a certain thing, yada, 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 etc., etc. We kind of beat that one down. But today we're going to focus a little bit on this over here. So what you're looking at here is a Morgan amplifier build. Now, this is one of his earlier builds. I couldn't tell you exactly what year it is, but, pre-2018 or something like that. I think it was right around then that he got into more of the PCB thing. That's kind of when his relationship with Bad started up and whatnot. So this is an earlier build, and I'm not exactly certain which one this is. Maybe a PR12 or something like that. Who knows? But I could be right. I don't know. So what are we looking at? When I say bad build, or, built to not the greatest standard, you look at this and most people would say that there's nothing wrong with this. It looks great, right? There's a bunch of little things that make it a bad build. We've talked about some of them en masse before. Obviously, things like the back of the pots here have been sanded and scuffed up so that way they could solder directly to the back of the pots. It looks disgusting, and it's a no-no. Obviously, they are using the back of the pots to ground out components, or to use as a grounding place for those components. Same for the output jacks down here. You can see that they are just using output, standard output jacks going straight to the chassis. I'm not sure how, I can't really see in here how it's grounded for the thing. Obviously there's this yellow wire that comes down, that's one of them. One of the outputs, and these ones are paralleled here, and then this one's the other tap or whatever. Taps is what I meant. But so I'm not sure exactly how it grounds out, if they're doing it through the chassis all together or if it's being done with another wire separately. I can't tell you that, so that I don't know. I don't know what the heck went. I don't know if it's just this particular amp or if it's a whole series or whatnot, but if you look in here carefully, you can see at least 4 or 5 different versions of resistors and even capacitors, to be honest. It is kind of bizarre. They used a carbon film in the power supply. Not sure exactly why. Then they used this guy here, which is I think like a Vichy or something like that. It's lower wattage, but then they used that guy for another node. And then they used metal film, these ginormous, these are the ones that I would use if they made more sense. So these are the Dale Vichy ones here. Ginormous, these are like the full-on 1 watt at, sub 500 volt rating ones. So these are actually more like 2 watt rated resistors. For the plate supply for the phase inverter, I'm not quite sure what that's about. Considering it's being fed by this, standard looking 1 watter here. So it's just like, okay, that's different. They've got this style of resistor here. I'm guessing it's not cathode bias. This is cathode bias, but I'm not exactly sure what this one's for. It looks like it could be for the bias supply. So they got a different, resistor there. They've got a different resistor even here for the tail of the phase inverter. So the phase inverter is this network of stuff here, and then this one's just a different resistor. And then for what I'm gonna guess is part of the, it looks to me like they're using this as a secondary tail or something like that. Maybe they're injecting, I don't know how they're doing it. I don't think this thing has a presence control. But for whatever reason, they got this guy here as some other form of whatever. It looks like a 1 ohm. I could be right, could be wrong. I don't know. It's fairly normal from that point on. They're using Jupiters, whatever. They've got, as I mentioned before, a couple different, 3 different brands, 4 different brands of capacitors in here. So they've got the power capacitors was one thing. They've got the bias supply is another one. They've got a different resistor here for the cathode biasing, going on. And then they got the ones here in the preamp section doing whatever they do. It's just bizarre. I'm not exactly sure what the plan was. None of the wires have really been straightened. They're all just kind of thrown in there. You can kind of see they're all just zigzag wherever they need to go. Another thing I always thought was weird, it looks much, much cleaner to put all these jumper wires on the bottom of the board where you don't see them. For whatever reason, they put them on the top. To me, it's just a little distracting. I don't know. It doesn't look pretty. Looking over on this side of the board, we can kind of see here they didn't really spend much time getting these things all straightened up and all pretty. Different lengths on the cables here. That's why this is what I was getting at about my thing with Ooga Booga. Like, I build amplifier. That's what I'm talking about with regards to that. Like, just slapping the parts in there and saying it's built is Ooga Booga. You can do it, that's great, but try to do better, right? That's my whole thing. Another thing that kind of makes this a bad build is down in this section here. There's a couple of no-nos that they've done here, and it's kind of hard to see it with the way the lighting is, but this guy here is the neutral, and it goes on down this way. As best as I can tell, they are breaking the neutral, not the hot, which is a no-no, because if you're looking at this jack here, this one here is the line. So this is the hot, if you will. This guy down here is the ground, and then this one here is the neutral. You're supposed to break the hot, not the neutral. And you can see here that this white wire kind of looks like it goes down in there. That one, to the best of what I can tell, comes around here and is what connects to this point right here. So it just kind of loops around and goes into there. And then this one here, it's really hard to see it, but this little thing that you kind of see right there, that's the tang for the fuse holder, which goes to the hot. Like you can kind of imagine that and see that, right? Now, this is a no-no because you're not supposed to use the sleeve portion of the fuse holder as the hot connected lead. You're supposed to use the tip. Now, the reason you're supposed to use the tip is that when you take this thing out, the fuse is supposed to come with it. Now, the only reason you'd be taking this thing out, the fuse that is that it's blown, right? So you would think that, okay, well, the fuse is blown, the amp's not working, I need to get inside there to do something. The first thing you would do then is pull the power, which would make any of this moot anyway. But when you pull this out, the fuse will come with it, which means there is no way for you to get your grimy ass fingers down here to the tip where that fuse would touch in on this lead right here, right? In theory, that's what that is supposed to, the idea behind it. Whereas some of these, I don't know if you've ever looked at them before, and the wife's trying to call. I've told her I was doing a live stream. I don't know what she's thinking. Sorry, wife. But so this guy here, the sleeve, if you will, when you take this out, there's oftentimes like a little metal ring that you can see around the edge there. Now you can imagine getting your fingers in there and on that, right? You would think that you could get your fingers in there. It's certainly much easier to get your grimy little fingers in there than it is all the way down here at the tip of this thing. Okay? That's why you don't use this lead for that connection to the hot line. Because if you did leave this connected, then you would very likely, if you were to try hard enough, get your fingers in there and buzz yourself pretty good. Now, conversely, if you're goofy enough to leave this connected and then put a new fuse in without using this little gray thing there with a little slot in it, kind of difficult to do. It doesn't make much sense because this thing is designed to hold the fuse. But let's say you put the fuse in without this little gray piece attached and you left this thing wired up. Then you could have an argument for why you would use this on the side, on the sleeve side as opposed to the tip if it was plugged in live. Because then, of course, as you go to pop the fuse in there, your finger would be touching the end of the fuse, which means you would get shocked, right? Makes sense. But obviously, you're not supposed to be doing this with any kind of power attached. So that is a nitpick, but that is a thing, and it is a real thing. Another thing that's a big no-no is they have colors on the wires for a reason. And there are codes for it as well, but white is generally considered to, it depends on what side of the globe you're at. Some people use white as hot, and again, this is more of a depends sort of thing. But then others use black as hot. I think here in the Americas, it's generally considered that black is hot and white is neutral. I think some speaker jacks, they'll use white as hot and black as ground, but we generally tend to think of black as being ground. That is not the case. For electrical code, black is considered hot. Now in Europe, it's a different story because you got blue, brown, and green. And I do not remember the exact theory behind it, but I believe it's the blue that is the neutral and the brown that is the hot, if I'm not mistaken, for European code. But that's beside the point. I'm an American, so... so yeah, this should be black, technically, and then this one is the correct color because it is white. But this guy down here, this little black lead that you see, that's like half the gauge of these ones here, seemingly, I don't know if it's just the jacket, but I don't know why they would use a different wire than what they're using for everything else. Kind of eludes me a little bit, but this guy here is not supposed to share its connection with anything else in the amp. Now, its placement is correct. It's supposed to be as near as practical to the, AC input of the amp. And it looks like if they made it just a little bit longer, it would possibly last, not break sooner than this one perhaps if it were, if this guy were to get yanked out of the amp, right? But you can see clearly that it is sharing the center tap ground for the transformer. So this green one here is the center taps for the heaters, which are these two green ones here. And then this red and yellow one is the center tap for the primaries, which are these two guys here that are two different lengths of wire. It's kind of a shame, but in either case, little nitpicks like that, those are things that make it bad. That is the thing that makes it bad. Other little things too, just, like this wire here just kind of zigzags through. He didn't go all the way around. You can actually see here that he didn't even wrap it all the way around. It just kind of bops out, right? If you look over here, you can see he did not crimp this lead around. So he managed to curl it around, but he didn't even twist it all the way around. He just kind of poked it around and then soldered it in place. Little things like that. It's just like ooga booga. That's literally what I get at when I'm going on about it. So, and then again, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty damn certain that he's breaking the neutral. Again, that's a huge no-no. You always break the connection to the hot. So let's move on to another picture. This is a modern production for him. This is, post BAD era. So his newer boards you can see are just PCB traces. It's a hybrid. It's part PCB for these wire connections, which you can kind of see what I was talking about here, how they go up and under and then shoot up into the turret board. This one's more like an eyelet style, and then it uses a PCB out. Now, if for any reason, which there isn't any reason that should, but if for any reason this thing burns up, like, you're just going to burn this trace up if it gets hot enough, right? I don't understand why they couldn't have figured out how to just literally put those things so close together. You didn't even need a PCB trace, right? I mean, it seems to me like they're using this board for multiple amps because there's an eyelet down here as well. Another thing I'm not a fan of, and he seems to do it on all of his amps, is this thing right here, where you take this guy and you put all the heat right next to the capacitor. That is just, I don't understand. These things are long enough that they should get all the way over and, go around the outer edge. Okay, cool. Let's say you don't want to do that. Then why don't you put another, turret or something like that, or eyelet next to it, and then run these separate so you don't even have to do this. Right now, if this capacitor goes bad, you're not replacing just the capacitor. You're replacing both of these, which means if you can't find the exact same thing here, it's going to be a mismatch. Whereas if it were separate, or at least over the top of it in such a way where you could remove it separately from the capacitor, that would be kind of cool, wouldn't it? Little things, again, that I'm just nitpicking. And then, of course, you can see they got all the solder flux on here that they did not bother to clean up. Let's go back a little bit. Now, you'll notice this stuff isn't very shiny. The solder, that is. I'm sure this was actually perhaps soldered by hand. Maybe not. Maybe it was wave soldered or something like that. I doubt it, though. This is probably somebody went in there with the solder tip. But in order to be, what is the word for it? Not CE, but like UL listed, CE certified, ROHS, ISO 9000, and all that stuff. All those different acronyms or whatever that they have for global trade and stuff like that. This has to be lead-free solder. Lead-free solder in amplifiers is just bleh. Now that's not on Morgan or bad. That's what it is, or that's what it takes in order to get that level of distribution. Is you have to abide by these certain global laws and policies and stuff like that don't necessarily have your best interest in mind in terms of quality and reliability. That is more a thing of, they just don't want lead particles and lead, being burned up all over the place to build all this stuff. So it's pick your poison, I guess, is what it is. Now, that's not to say that it's better that, somebody like me who uses leaded solder is going to have a better amp just because of that. It's just, that is a difference, and there is a difference. So here's another one. Again, nothing crazy. This is one of his newer eras here, but you can kind of see what I was talking about with the jacks being straight to the thing. You can't really tell. Oop, wrong way. You can't really tell how he's grounding out these jacks here, if it's straight to the chassis or not. Again, you can kind of see that he's still not doing this part here right. The little things like that. Again, we're nitpicky. Leads like this, just kind of goofy. At least he's not using the back of the pots anymore. Props on that. So that's good that he didn't do that here. So here's another build. This is another earlier one. It looks like an AC20 Deluxe. It really honestly looks like this thing is crooked inside of the chassis. I'm not sure if that was intentional or not. Same. You know, he doesn't really have a color scheme, if you will. Looks like he's using a red wire here for the neutral. Again, not a good thing. Just because it's, again, the code. Going on the code thing, it's not a good thing. And then, of course, you know, filling the holes with those little, I think you can get them for 75 cents over there at like Home Depot and stuff like that. This is a cool amp. I wouldn't mind owning one of these. If I couldn't build one, I would, or if I didn't have the ability to build one myself, I wouldn't mind buying one. So let's recap a little bit on this. So a lot of these Morgan amps are kind of more or less loosely based on Fender type designs. I think that's more where his roots kind of lie. I think he's got a couple other versions out there I'm not too familiar with, but most of his famous ones or more popular ones are Fender designs. I would take this over a Fender any day of the week. Even the hand-wired Fenders that they have now, I would still take this one any day of the week. Sans some of the, you know, code violations, which are fixable, like you can go in there and do that stuff. But, you know, little things like that kind of bug me a little bit. Now, another company that I was kind of picking on the other day was Port City. Now, Port City, if I had to choose between Port City and Morgan, I would go with Port City any day of the week. They're using Hammond transformers. I think they have a mishmash of different transformers that they use. I think they had an era where they were using Hammonds, and you can see Hammonds here for sure with all the paint on the leads. That's one of my gripes about Hammond. I think I mentioned it in another video that they don't. Oh shoot! You know, it'd kind of be nice if I was. Yeah, ROHS means it's gonna. I apologize. I've not been paying attention to the chat over here. Thank you guys for getting in there. You better not be mocking me. Yeah. No, the resistors definitely have shorter leads now. Yeah, the longer leads is kind of a thing of the past. And capacitors, of course, because they are larger in size in general, the leads are always longer. Yeah, I don't like it tight either. Just kidding. Anyway, I apologize. I had to put that one in there. Thank you guys. Keep it up. Thank you, Lefty X, Dead K Boy, or Dead Kobe. Is that what it is? Sorry, I'm trying to squint here. It's tiny in my little window over here. I need to pay attention, obviously, more to the other screen here. So thank you guys for joining in. Appreciate that. I kind of started banging through this. I'm not trying to turn this into a 5-hour long thing. So let's just stop for a second. Let's go back to this view here and take a sip to that. A little bit of ASMR for you. So obviously you can see I've kind of cleaned up my space a little bit too. I'm a damn rock star builder. Hell yeah, we all are, and we all certainly can be. That's for damn sure. All right, so let's keep moving on here. So Port City, killer freaking company. I honest to God, if I couldn't build an amp and I had to pick between these two companies, I'd go Port City all the way. Now I think this is some of their earlier stuff, maybe before they were a little more mainstream. I don't know. Don't quote me. There's a couple things that they did that, again, are kind of no-nos. I opened this one up first to kind of drive home that point I was making about how these things get wired in and code and all that stuff. So, again, we're looking here at the rectifier tube, and you can see that they have a little, you know, not a standoff, but, you know, like a junction, whatever you want to call it, port, tab, if you will, soldering tab. That goes with the correct wire, mind you, but not long enough. So again, keep in mind, this is supposed to be long enough that it's the last thing that would break if this thing were to get yanked out, okay? So it does need to be a little bit longer, but very, very much so, it is supposed to be on its very own, tab and location in the amp. It's not supposed to share anything. It's not supposed to be connected to the transformer or to the rectifier tube and whatnot. It's supposed to be on its own, tab. Again, we're looking over here where they went with odd color choices for the hot. And don't even get me started with why they decided to use the leftover wire from this for the hot lead going over. That is a huge no-no as well. But again, they're using the sleeve as the hot, and then they're coming out the tip to jump across. I believe this one here, yeah. And you can see just the horrendous look of the Hammond transformers. It's just a shame. I asked them specifically, it's like, hey, can you make these things and not put this black, goo that gets all over the place, and covers up the wires and stuff like that? And they sent a thing back to me saying, well, in order to do that, we would not pot the transformer, and we will not warranty any transformer that's not potted. And I was like, I don't think you understood what I meant. I still want you to pot them. I just don't want you to paint it with that black doo-doo. But I left it at that. Obviously, I'm not ready to start buying, 20 or 30 of these at a time or more to get the discounts and to demand the kind of, quality I want. Now, if Port City can't do it, I highly doubt that I'm going to be able to, get much traction out of it. I think they're using Hayboer now. Hayboer looks much, much cleaner in this regard because they don't have this black schmoo everywhere. But, whatever. I digress. So yeah, having this green wire here, a huge no-no. And then obviously this other wire here for the neutral is the wrong color as well. It goes down that way. I don't know, whatever. It is what it is. And it could be that is the neutral color for this transformer. I couldn't say for sure. I don't know. Transformers sometimes have odd colored options for stuff. I don't think I recall much else with this particular build that was crazy. They didn't have to bend this one here. You can see it all looks right for the pilot light. We're going to show a couple other pictures where they really kind of made it look ugly, but you can just see the difference in quality. The solder here looks like it's shiny and it's not, a huge, blob or whatever. They're using normal PVC jacketed wire, which is just impossible to make it look really, really clean. You can see here where it got burned maybe by the iron or something like that. It's little things like that kind of drag down the quality, but I mean, it's PVC wire. It burns just looking at it anyway. So Teflon wire is great because you can pretty much lay the iron on it and let it sit there, go take a whiz, come back, and it'd still be fine. Just little things. Burns there. Looks like they got a bunch of splatter on here. They didn't quite clean up the spatter, but you can just see right off the get-go that this is a much, much cleaner build than that Morgan was. I wish they gave a little more space right here, but not the end of the world. They are using the back of the pot. Again, I can't say it enough. That is like my biggest pet peeve is using the back of the pot as a place to make connections, but whatever. And then of course they're using it looks like they're at least using perhaps toothed things on here, but they're still using the jack as a ground point for the speaker jacks. Again, huge no. Don't do that. So they said they did the transformer in wax, or I wish I knew what it was. It to me it looks like they dip it in it's not wax, it's varnish. So it's kind of like like paint that's just clear, more or less, like clear paint that they dip it in, and then usually it's heated up a little bit so it's more fluid, and then when you dip the thing, the transformer or your pickups or whatever it might be that you're varnishing, it gets into the inside of the transformer, and all the air is wicked out or floats on out of there, and then when it hardens, everything kind of locks in place. And then to me it looks like they are painting it with spray paint. Like it literally just looks like black spray paint. To me, that's what it looks like, but it gets all over the wires. It flakes off easy enough, but it does discolor the wires where it does cover it. So like the green isn't quite as green anymore. The yellow is not quite as yellow. White turns to like this weird grayish color almost, and it looks unsightly. And then the other problem is it's really like rigid, not rigid, but like flaky. So if you bend the wire enough, this stuff will start cracking off, and then it gets wherever the hell it wants to. It just looks unsightly. Hay Bower doesn't do that. And if it does, it's like clear anyway. You know, the varnish is actually clear. So I'm not sure what this is. I wish I knew, but it's very unsightly. Here's another one. I think this is the one I showed you guys last night. Again, not much to nitpick on this one. I think this is a later production one, but you can see here where they bent the whatchamacallit up at an odd angle to clear the transformer. Little things like that. I'm not 100% sure. Now, I could be wrong. I'm usually not, though. I wish I could say that. But this wire here looks to me like a center tap that would normally be for the heater wires. But then they also have an artificial center tap for the heater, for the heater supply. So I'm not sure. Generally, I'm not even certain that you can use both of them. I don't think it would matter either way because you have a difference here. But I wouldn't have bothered with that. I prefer, so if I'm going to do an elevated center tap, or not an elevated, I'm going to talk about an elevated center tap. If I'm going to do an artificial center tap, I am going to elevate it off of the cathode of the output tubes if it's a cathode biased amp. So I'm not sure if this one's cathode biased. Nope, it is not. I can see already that it is not. So this group of wires that you see right here, and then you got this one with the blue in it. So that one's the 50 volt supply, and those other two are the HT runs that come in. So they're using solid state rectification in this. We'll talk a little bit more about this diode string in a second here, but in either case, with a cathode biased amp, if you use the cathode of the tubes, the output tube specifically, to elevate the center tap, you can actually lower hum by about the amount of voltage that, it's not exactly like by the voltage, but let's just say that the cathode is 60 volts above zero, right? Or 20 volts above zero. Let's use a more realistic number. So 20 volts above zero. Well, that means that all the heaters are also going to be 20 volts above or below zero. I guess it would technically be at that point. But so because it's 20 volts below, absolute zero, if you want to call it that, that means that the hum from the heaters will then be reduced in volume by that much. It's measured in dB, but it's not like you're going to lose 20 dB. It's, there's a ratio to it. But more or less what I'm getting at is that the hum from the heaters will be quieter later on in the amp. So it's better to do it that way. Generally speaking, though, if you have a transformer with the center tap, you will use the center tap as opposed to an artificial center tap, because it obviously, it does what it needs to do. So, because that's what the audience sees inside. Yeah. So, little things like that. I don't like this. I'm not sure what this is all about. That could be wrong. This might be a different center tap for something else, perhaps. Now, let's talk a little bit about this diode string here. Given what I do know about this amp, it is looks like 100 watt. I do see 4 output tubes here. So there might be 500 plus volts on the HT rail, maybe more, maybe less, but I'm going to guess right around, 450, between 450 and 500 volts is what I'm going to guess. Now, each of these, if they're the 1N4007s, are rated for 1,000 volts each. Now, that's 1,000 volts of actual spiked, whatever you want to call it, which can happen in a transformer like this that doesn't go through like a rectifier or anything like that. It doesn't have anything else in the pathway. So you can have that. So generally you would use 2. When you use 2, you get double the amount of voltage that you can spike up to, right? So instead of 1,000 volts of, spiked current or spiked voltage, you can now have 2,000 volts of spiked voltage. Well, I highly doubt that they're going to have or need 3,000 volts of protection. So I would more than likely bet that they're using these as a way to kind of almost in a sense act similar in regards to a tube rectifier in terms of the voltage drop. So each diode drops about, it's like 7/10 of a volt, so 0.7 volts, right? Well, you've got 1, 2, nearly 3 volts per string. So you're going to have at least a 6-volt drop. So this is a way, if you need to drop voltage off your HT rail, is to just use diodes in a string like this, and you can drop by 7/10 of a volt per diode. That could be what they were doing, is they needed to shed 6 volts off the HT rail. I don't know why they would. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they just wanted to fill the space. Who knows? It's just a way. It's not the way. It's a way. So, aside from that, like this is a great looking build right here. You can obviously see what I was talking about with how these wires go underneath. So this right here comes off of the plates of the phase inverter, which is over here. So that means that this wire here is more than likely going underneath, down and around over to here, and then up to that point there. And then this one here is coming around over to here and up into this point. So it looks very, very pretty from the top, but underneath here there is some coilies of wire in order to hide all that stuff and make it so that this thing's a little more serviceable. And when I say a little more serviceable, what I mean is when you take these screws off here so you can lift this turret board up, generally if you just wire hot off the top and down onto the tube sockets, you have no length of wire that you can move the turret board around with, which means it's really hard to work with, I guess, at that point. Now, to me, that's not necessarily a downside because, in theory, you should never really have to rip this thing out unless something catastrophic happens. Right? Makes sense. But, whatever. I digress. It's probably just being... Yeah, no, you're probably right. Fender Twin Reavers uses 3 diodes as well. No, you're right. It could be a copycat thing. It could be a multitude of things. It's really hard to get exactly inside of their minds and know exactly what they're thinking and why they do things. I try not to do it unless it's practical. Like if I need to dump voltage off the HT, I usually do it through the center tap. So because the center tap really doesn't have as much current flowing through it because it's kind of negative positive, right? It passes through zero, if you will, because it's carrying both sides of the HT in it. So every time it flip-flops, right, this thing is passing through zero. So instead of trying to dump 20 volts with all the current there is on that one HT run, well, if you do it through here, it's passing through zero, which means it's going to spend less time heating up. So I'll use a diode there, and you can use like a Zener diode with a, say a 20 volt. Let's say you want to drop 20 volts off of your HT rail. You can put a diode between the center tap and ground of your HT side of things, your secondaries, and it won't drop 20 volts. It'll drop more like 15 or something like that. But you can play with those numbers, and then of course, based on the amount of current that you're pulling, and when I say current, that includes all the current through the plates of your output tubes and of course your preamp section. So you kind of have to take all that into effect as well, or account as well. So you might need a 5, 10, 20, or 50 watt, diode in order to pull that off. But it just depends. There's all kinds of different things you can do and all kinds of depends. But I try to get the transformers that I want like in the zone so that if they're within like 5 to 10 volts. 5 to 10 volts isn't the end of the world. I have found anyway. It's if you're 5 volts or 10 volts low, it's not going to make or break the amp, either way. But, and then the last one, again, just nitpicky little things. I think this one's a later one because this one looks like it's a hay bower. Also, this one looks like it was a hay bower as well. But you can see here that they bent it up again. It's at some odd angle. to clear the turret board here. Now, why they didn't just notch out a section of it and then put the screw there beside me, I couldn't tell you. Little things like that just take away from the whole thing, because everything else about this thing is tits, man. Realistically, one little thing that I feel is kind of a no-no is literally taking this is a signal wire right here, and you're running it against something and zip tying it to it, which means that they can sympathetically vibrate together. There's no telling I couldn't tell you right now what direction each signal is in this, but let's say they're going in opposite paths. Let's say that this is a positive going signal and this one's a negative one. You can actually end up with some sort of capacitive thing that goes on between those two wires, and it can either couple if it's, in phase with each other, and if they're out of phase, you can actually get some cancellation, and of course it's based on capacitance and stuff like that. So things like this I really try not to do. As convenient as it is and as nice as it is to make this thing stay put, the way that this thing is probably sitting in the amp, you probably don't really need to have that there. I'm going to guess that this is, going to be laying down. So gravity's going to try to pull this thing down and away anyway. And it's only going to go so far because the bottom of the, cabinet is there to keep it from moving around, right? But zip tying it directly to some other component that has signal flowing through it, probably not the wisest idea. But you can see they don't really clean up the boards. I wish they clean up. So I go through and I spend the time and I scrape or try to wipe off any of these little solder balls that I can. But I'll tell you right now, like, the solder job on this is spot on. I'm not a fan of this type of wire. This is just solid core. I have some of this stuff myself. It's solid core pushback stuff, and it looks like they might have the PVC centered stuff. So most of the wire that you buy these days, it looks like this. It's actually just PVC wire. So that's this style of wire down here, like this red and yellow one. And then they literally take a cloth thing and put it over the top. Holy cow, we're up to 30 viewers now? Wow, guys, thanks. Anyway, Tad Weber did the Zener. Yeah, no, it's a way to do it. It's not, like I say, it's not the way, but it's a way. It's better to just get the right transformer or plan things around it. So, I mean, another way that you can end up getting the B plus to drop a little bit is, depending on how, drop or go up, I guess you could say, can also depend on how you bias your tubes. So if you like biasing your tubes colder, so they're not drawing as much current, let's just say that's your thing. Obviously, you're going to have more voltage on the HT rail as a result. So you may have to use like a bigger dropping resistor or something like that, which causes some sag. Some people like that, some people don't. So it's a double-edged sword. Whereas conversely, again, same transformer, but you like running your tubes a little bit hotter, let's say. So maybe you get up like literally around the 70% mark. And we're talking more of I guess it doesn't matter if it's cathode biased or fixed bias in that case, but again, biasing hotter will drop the HT voltage more because you have more current flowing through the tubes, which means it's putting more draw on the HT, which will cause the voltage to drop down a little bit lower instead of higher, going the other way, right? So you kind of have to have a window anyway. That's why I say 5 to 10 volts really doesn't matter either direction, because if you throw in a hotter set of tubes the next time around, it's going to draw the HT down anyway. Whereas conversely, you put in a colder set of tubes, it could, leave the B plus a little too high. There's all kinds of depends. There's no one answer for everything. They still kind of do that whole jack straight to the chassis thing. It can work. It's not that it doesn't work. It's just not the right way. But are there any questions? Because I kind of gotten through everything. 1 to 2 volts at the wall. We'll change it. 10 to 20 volts on the other side as well. I think my voltage here at my place ranges between 118 and 121 or something like that. Depends on the time of day or whatnot. So yeah, that is a factor as well. Another trick that you can do, let's just say you're limited on your choices for transformers, power transformers. Let's say you know that you want to run a hotter voltage than what the transformer would normally produce with the 120 volt tap. Well, most transformers come with at least two, but sometimes three different taps. So they'll have 110, 115, and 120 volt tap. Some have 115, some have 120, and some have 125 volt tap. So you can play with the tap that you're going to use to adjust the voltage a little bit. So you can jump it up a little ways, or you can actually, depending on, again, on the transformer, you can actually get the output voltage to be a little bit lower. 123, yeah, that's pretty strong. 123 volts at the wall. I was at this venue once, man. I had 126 volts coming out of it, and I was just like, Jesus. So, are there any questions about what I was talking about? Like, is there anything that I didn't make clear, or do you think I was perhaps wrong about my criticisms? I guess what I want to do is go back and say, I don't mean anything disparaging against, Mr. Morgan and the guys at Port City. They make amazing amps. Compared to the crap that you can buy, like a Black Star, the some of the orange products and stuff like that, like the lower end stuff, the Fender stuff for sure. I mean, Fender's amps are just getting all kinds of flack lately these days because they're just made to the cheapest of cheap standards. But when you compare it to that, and Fender's not cheap, they're pile of crap stuff. I make amazing amps, damn it. I'm gonna have to check out your channel, my man. Now that I have you in my thing, I can definitely check you out, because I have no doubt. So, great amps. I'm not saying go out and buy one, but just, caveat emptor type thing, there are, as great as they are, they still have their downsides. And it's not just them. There's all kinds. Let's, because we were already talking about it the other day, let's drag up Valhalla. Did I even spell it right? No. Maybe I didn't. Whatever. Just amps. It'll figure it out. There we go. Yeah, we were here the other day. So, for those of you who were not on my live stream the other day, 5E8, yeah, 5E3, yeah. Has a 4,000 subs. Ooh, nice. Yeah, I'm shocked that I have as many subs as I have currently. I'm coming up around the 1900 mark. It baffles my mind. So kudos to you. I'll definitely check you out, and I'll put my subscription in. Let's see if this takes me anywhere. Nope, the page can't be found. Isn't that shitty? Thor, I think this is one of them. Yeah, $15,750. This is an expensive damn amp, and I want to show you something that's a little bit weird. So you would think with an amp that costs as much money as it does that not look familiar to you? Like, if you were to take this thing and invert the image and change its color, does it not look like this is just a, what would you call it, superimposed? Like, literally invert this image this way and change it to green, and you would have this. That's what it looks like to me, and it actually looks like they did that with the whole of the shell. So I'm not even sure. Looks to me like they're using superimposed images here, and they're just changing the colors and stuff. So I kind of wonder. There was a guy on YouTube that was doing a demo of these things, and it actually sounded dang good. Don't get me wrong. It's not that they're shitty amps in that regard. They're just egregiously expensive. Nerd's got a nerd. Hell yeah, we do. Egregiously expensive, but I mean, it sounded fine. That's fine. But if you go to the About page, this is the part I was pointing out the other day that was just absolutely horrendous. There's nothing special about any of the components in here. The Vishays are available to you, me, and everyone else. They're par for the course. There's nothing bad about Vishays. They're just not the best of the best either. So whatever. The resistors that they're using, I don't even know why they bother using different ones, but the resistors that they're using are not super special. There's nothing crazy good or bad about them. They're just par for the course. But the solder job, you can just see the solder job on here just looks like hell. They didn't straighten any of the leads. Nothing's like super duper lined up or anything like that. And there's just this ginormous solder blob on here. It looks like butt. So things like that, when you're selling a $15,000 amp, kind of chap my hide a little bit. Yeah, those are audiophile prices for sure. Yeah, look, like seriously, these things are, it's the exact same thing with just a different like hue color over it. I mean, if this were actually an amp that I was selling and I had a $15,000 price tag on it, I'd at least show the picture of what it actually looks like inside of the cabinet that it would be in, not a superimposed one or whatever they call that, copy and paste. Another thing I was pointing out about these ones is the turret board here. You can again just see how atrocious some of the welds are. When I say welds, I'm talking solder. But again, the flying lead thing. I'm not a fan of the flying leads thing. I'm in the camp that if you can't find a place on the turret board for it, then you need to find a nicer, prettier way to get the lead to fly across at least. Whether you make it look like a wire or something, I don't know. Just something better than this. I would never in a million years count on something like that to be... I don't know what they're trying to do here. That doesn't look very smart. That's all I can say about that. So turrets, I don't know if you're familiar with turrets. Maybe some of you have slammed them home. Maybe some of you haven't. But there is a possibility that those things can come loose. And it's even entirely possible that the bottom part that is swedged can break off. And then whatever this might be connecting to, if it's a compression fit, it will no longer be a compression fit if for whatever reason this thing happens to vibrate enough that the turret starts to break apart. So for those of you not familiar with how these things are made, most of them are made out of like brass or some sort of like copper material, or like a bronze type copper amalgamation. And then it's got a little post that goes through the Garolite or G10 or whatever the hell fiberboard that they're using. And you use an anvil and a swedge is what I call it, but it's basically an anvil and a hammer. And then you basically bop on it, or you can press it with like a press or something like that, and it squishes out the bottom half, and that's what pinches it and compresses it onto your fiberboard. Well, this stuff is actually pretty brittle. I don't know if you've ever worked with bronze or brass and whatnot before, but unless it's like really, really well annealed, the stuff will shatter. Basically, it crumbles apart like that pot steel does. Not very good. So I've had a couple turrets I put together where I go and I smash it together, and half the freaking bottom part of the swedge breaks off. And you're just like, well, that's no freaking good. And then you reef on it, like literally you push on the edge of the turret a little bit, and it'll break the rest away. And then you gotta smoosh your, right? You gotta smoosh them. I'm all about the smooshing. Come on. I don't know if you've seen it. I actually made a video on how to make a turret press from parts you can get at Harbor Freight. There's a watch press that they sell. It's like $14 for this thing, and it just happens to have amplified parts squished before they break. I'm gonna check that out, because the ones I've been getting from Antique Electronic Supply, which is amplified parts basically, but excuse me, goodness, the ones I've been getting, like, they don't look like the ones you usually find from like the machine manufactured stuff. Like they kind of just, yeah, it is the same guys. Maybe I'm just buying the wrong ones. I don't know. Some of them, when I squish them down, they look great. Some of them, they kind of, like break apart or split in a few spots here and there. I haven't had any major problems with them in that regard, but I've had a couple over, doing several of these different builds where, one or two, like, they just don't make it. But going back, I made this turret press. And it's pretty cool because the way that the little watch press works has, like, it's a perfect like 1/4 inch hole on the top and the bottom, and then you can literally take the anvil and hammer that you can buy from Amplified Parts, and you can insert them. You have to cut them a little bit, but you can insert them into both ends of the of this little watch press thing, and you got yourself a perfect turret press. I don't know if I'm going to continue to do it with that because I do now have a drill press that I can do this with, probably a little bit easier on my hands, I guess. But I will say this, that little turret press thing I made is pretty dang quick. I think I can do a board probably about like this in maybe 10 minutes, maybe less. Actually, this one be even less because there's nothing crazy. So I do my turrets kind of like these guys do here, not this one. Kind of like these do here, where there's all these different spots around, so you kind of got to go through and get everything aligned, etc., etc. But whatever. So yeah, not a fan of this kind of crap here. So you can kind of see why I'm a little hypercritical about some of these amps. None of these parts are like super duper lined up. None of the leads are straight. They got this little concoction here where they literally twisted two of these resistors together. I think I said it on the other videos. It's like, why not just use the right size resistor? And if you need a bigger one, then use a bigger one. I don't know. Me things. And it's all about me, dang it. So let's talk about a little bit about what's coming up in the future. I do get a new camera on Wednesday. I mentioned it earlier. It's probable that I'm going to try to do another live stream that day just to kind of test it out. I don't know what we'll talk about yet. I'll figure that out soon enough. Maybe we'll start doing a live stream of me actually building that pedal that I've been working on. I don't know that we'll finish it in that video, but definitely a video soon to come. Actually, no, I'm not going to be able to do that day. Darn it. I got to pick up the missus from the airport, and that's going to eat into my time. So, scratch that. You will not see a video from me on Wednesday, but perhaps on Thursday I'll do one. I have plans with some friends this weekend, so I may not be doing anything this weekend. I don't know. I'll get a video out soon, though. I need to keep up the pace that I have been with this. So I think we've kind of beat this. The Mr. V Karen is the best pedal ever. Let's check that out. I want to check this out. What is it called? The Mr. V Karen Carpenter. The angriest distortion pedal made by hand. I think this is it. How is it $110 though? Is this the one? Give me a thumbs up if that's the one. $110 though? Mr. V, yeah. Karen. Speak to manager, call cops. Hell yeah, that's funny. I wonder what it is. I'm not gonna play the video, but well, you know what? Let's freaking play it. I think you should be able to hear this, so let's see what we get here. I'll be quiet if it starts to play.
Okay, this is Karen. This is the pedal that hates you. It probably hates me too. Mode 1 is a darker sort of rhythm distortion. This is sort of the irritating mode. Drive can be adjusted.
Well, it's a little. The quality of that video is not great, but I'll have to check that out a little bit more. That definitely is funny, but it's an angry as crap distortion. Oh, you make that? Oh, okay. Is that you in the video or no? I hope not, because if it is, you gotta make a better video. That one was a little noisy. It's a lot of background noise, so a little fuzzy, I guess, if you will. Is this, so let's do this one.
Hello and welcome to AM Guitar with me, Anjay. Today we are looking at the Karen Basic from Eddie Rifkin pedals. Some time ago you would have seen me demo the original. You're interested. And so instant.
So it's obviously solid state, I take it.
And In fact, if I drop the EQ out entirely by taking mostly kind of a volume cut.
I can definitely tell it's an angry pedal.
Bass outputs. So you can use these controls to really shape your tone.
Oh, okay.
Now,
You don't know about this one? All right. Is it? It's not this one then, is it? Well, I guess you're probably behind me, and it's not the Eddie Rifkin one. It's this one here then. I'll definitely check that out some more. It's good to know now that we got some reference here. But guys, I want to thank you. It's been about an hour now, so I'm glad we were able to. Okay. Perfect. Okay. I will definitely check that out a little bit more. I'm not really into the whole pedal thing, to be honest. I think I mentioned it the other day. I kind of did like a little historium about myself, and maybe I did, maybe I didn't. But I have a love-hate relationship with pedals. So I've been playing now for like 30 years. I'm old. But when I first started playing, of course, I could only do pedals, and I think I don't think, I know, but I had a Zoom 2020. I'm dating myself now, but that was my first like real pedal. The Adversary, I like that. Way cool. Yeah, I'm all about the solid state / tube thing. But so yeah, I bought some pedals back in that era. Kind of a shame now because I did own a TS10, an Ibanez TS10. I owned like a Proco Rat and a couple others from that era that are now worth 100 times what I paid for it even at that time. I think I got that TS10 for $25, and it's crazy to think that it would be like everyone had a Zoom 2020. So mine actually boomeranged. This is a funny thing. So I sold it to somebody who sold it to somebody, and then I go into a music store one day, and there it is sitting in a thing. But this was like 2 or 5. It was at least 5 years after I had initially sold it. This thing showed up back in a music store, so I picked it back up again. I think I actually came out ahead because when I sold it, I think I sold it for like $50 or $60 or something like that. And when I picked it up from this place, it was only $20. But so I came out ahead on my own pedal twice. But where was I going? Oh yeah, so I'm not a big pedal guy. I had this era where I was using nothing but pedals, but then they started, the cables that they had back then were not as nice as they are now, and I kept running into like little issues. And then I had a Crate Blue Voodoo that I purchased, and just plugged straight into the front of that, and that's how I rolled for 15, at least 10 or 15 years, just like that. And then I finally got like a real amplifier. I think I got an X100B, a PV Ultra, and then ultimately I picked up a PV Triple X. At the time I was more into the high gain, thing, and what I would do is set it for like a lower gain setting, more like a crunch, and then I would just use the volume knob of the guitar to get my kind of clean to mean thing. Well, it wasn't until after I picked up a real amplifier, not a Crate Blue Doo-Doo, that I was like, oh, okay, cool. There are better amps out there. And now, of course, I'm like a snob, I guess, if you will. Not that my amps sound like the best amps. I'm not saying that my amps are the best amps in the world. I think they do a really cool thing. And, I don't present them to people unless I'm like super duper happy. Currently, my flagship amp is my 18 watt. That is like my most refined. It's more approachable. Yeah. No, you're right. Well, and most people are going down the pedal thing. Like it's come back around. Like lately in the last few years, I feel like I was kind of fortunate enough to see ahead of time that the whole lunchbox amp thing was gonna be the next step in guitar amplification. So I bought an Ignator tweaker pretty early in the game, and then watched it explode from there. And all of a sudden everybody's got basically a lunchbox head. Now they're doing it with everything you can possibly imagine. But so I knew that was going to be the next thing. And then when it started, there was like this weird shift. I want to say I noticed it probably 10, 15 years ago, right about the time of the advent of the whole lunchbox thing. But um, that people were using pedals as the predominant way to drive their core sound. So they would set the amps up at like the edge of breakup and use the pedals to kind of get them the rest of the way. Like effects loops were starting to be kind of outmoded by the players that you loved and cared about the most. Anyway, it seemed that way, at least for me. And then when I started getting into building amps, that was kind of the motive, if you will, for what I was doing. So when I got my 18 water, it, as I mentioned in other videos, it was a kit, and I built it just as the kit was meant to be, and it was really cool. It sounded great, but it didn't do the thing I wanted. It just didn't do what I wanted it to do. So yeah, I had to immediately start doing things to it, and then finally, excuse me. Sorry, I didn't mean to burp in your ears like that, but it was coming. But yeah, sorry. I'll try not to do that to you again. My apologies. How rude of me. But I'm gonna go ahead and get out of this view here. We're gonna view things here. So, when I built the 18 watt, I was happy with it, but I wasn't happy with it. So then I was immediately on the thing to try to get it modified to where I wanted it to. I must have put 50 different types of circuits in it trying to get what I wanted, what I truly wanted out of it. And then I finally tried something that I hadn't done before, which was just going straight from the input of the first stage directly to the phase inverter. And that was just like the eye opener for me. It was like immediately just the, oh my God tone. Like, this is right. This is what it was supposed to be. This is what this thing is meant to be. And then, of course, I just refined it a little bit more from there. But it's still kind of, as simple of a circuit as it is, it's still kind of my flagship amp just because it is the simplest, I think, of all the circuits that I have. And it just does what it's supposed to do. So, I don't know. I kind of feel like pedals are definitely Inagata Davida, right? I thought I heard somebody say bless you earlier, too. But, so, yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like pedals have been the thing, and so I've been getting back into them now lately, which is why I kind of went ahead with the whole pedal thing I'm doing. It was kind of always a plan of mine anyway, because I knew that my amps weren't going to appeal to anybody that wants to have a really gainy amp. My amps have more like a crunch to them, but it's all output section type stuff. So it's phase inverter and output tubes. So you either have to live with phase inverter only type distortion, which is crunchy in and of itself, or you have to turn it up so loud that, you know, the neighbors start yelling at you and you make friends with the policia. So take care, my man, Lefty. Have a good one. Oh, or unless you meant my burp was a nice out. I'm almost done, so stick around. I'm going to be done in like 5 minutes, I promise. I need to get out of here too. But, so yeah, just to close it on up, my best things would make ground loop eliminated. You know, those are helpful. Obviously I know and understand how grounding works. I don't think a lot of people do. So those are great little tools for, you know, people that don't understand it, and you can get where you need to go really quick with that. Me, I'm just a butthead enough that I'll just, you know, move things around until the buzz goes away. But that's just me. So yeah, now lately I've been doing the pedal thing. I wanted to build these pedals mainly because I don't know what happened. So in the 90s or something like that, I think there was either a patent that came out or there was something that came out that basically kept people from building a true high voltage tube based pedal. You had like the tube driver, which is still a starved plate design, the BK Butler tube driver or whatever. But there wasn't really any actual high gain versions that were readily available until probably the last like 5 or so years, maybe 10 years or whatnot. And then that was when it was just like, oh, okay, now people are really starting to do something I've always wanted to do. So, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to do anything that's original. I mean, I've already showed a couple pedals that are kind of already like right up the alleyway that I'm trying to go with them anyway. I guess more or less the idea for me is to just have an option that's available. It's probably one of those things where it'll just be included in the purchase of the amp, just to add value to it. Because I do understand that, building a clean, an amp that's meant to be clean only is going to be very difficult to, get people. Yeah, I was watching that video. His latest version of it that he's done. I think it was in part 4 or something like that. Pretty sure it was part 4. I thought it sounded killer. That's a lot of gain for just essentially one tube, if you will. He's essentially, for those of you who are not understanding what's going on with that and haven't watched it yet, go check out, what is his last name? It's Clay. I can't remember, but he's got this channel and it's called Building a High Voltage Tube Preamp or something like that. And it's four parts now, but he's only using one tube. So the first triode is cascading into the second triode, and it's got a fair amount of gain. I was actually quite impressed with that, to be honest. So Clay DeJong, that's right, or DeJong. I always feel like I'm butchering his last name. Yeah, Clay DeJong, cool cat. He's been doing this for a while. He's doing this for a long while now. He's definitely beat me to the punch on a lot of this stuff. That's why I kind of slowed down on doing like the Why You Love It So Much series, because he's already done a few of the amps that I was looking at doing, and I didn't realize it until I started, the list started popping up in my feed, and I was like, oh, well, I don't need to step on his toes. He's already done a good enough a job. So anyway, guys, most likely guys, if there's any ladies out there, thank you so much. Thank you all so very much. I am going to call it. I think we've talked enough today. I will see you guys in the next couple days. I like turtles. I like turtles too. But you guys have a wonderful, wonderful evening, and I will talk to you guys again soon.